Hi, I'm Steve Saylor. Welcome to the first of my videos. The Saylor signal went up recently for me to make a few videos explaining some key concepts for my book, Noticing. I'm going to start off with a light and non-controversial topic: intelligence. So let's get to it. Intelligence. Why is it me who's talking about intelligence? I'm not a scientist. I don't even play one on TV. I'm an opinion journalist who long ago noticed that there was a couple of niches that nobody was filling. A pundit who was not ignorant about the more politically fraught findings of the human sciences, and a commentator foolhardy enough to follow what that data says and then publish it. In my half-century studying the subject, I've gotten to know a number of the genuine heavyweight scientists in these fields, and I've listened in on high-level discussions. Thus, in 2013, when a survey of academic scientists in the field of intelligence research was taken, I was rated the single most reliable source in the media. It's important to grasp that IQ, short for intelligence quotient, is not some discredited pseudoscience. It's actually one of the strongest subfields within all of psychology, with 120 years of research behind it. IQ is real, and thus obviously worthy of study. So what is IQ and why talk about it? First, IQ is a measure of general intelligence. Oddly, there's no agreed upon definition of intelligence, yet we tend to know it when we see it. In the early 20th century, Spearman described intelligence as general mental energy. Likewise, Binet said, intelligence was the faculty of adapting oneself to circumstances. More recently, Linda Gottfredson called intelligence the collection of mental traits that involve the ability to reason, plan, solve problems, think abstractly, and comprehend complex ideas. Intelligence, unsurprisingly, makes us, on average, better at school, better at our jobs, allows us to make more money, live longer, stay out of jail, and in general makes us more effective at doing the things we want to do. Curiously, there doesn't appear to be all that much real-world difference in who scores high on which. Many assume that IQ tests are driven by nature and achievement tests by nurture, but in actuality, the same people tend to do about the same on both. This suggests that most kinds of intelligence are driven by similar, if still hazy, combinations of nature and nurture. A lot of differences in cognitive ability are environmental, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. But recent advances in the field of genetics are making it possible for scientists to begin to hone in on the exact genetic variants associated with intelligence. IQ tests. What are IQ tests? And how do they measure this collection of traits we call intelligence? IQ tests come in a wide variety of forms, but most work fairly well. Some resemble old-fashioned Reader's Digest word power vocabulary quizzes, while others specifically test weird abilities to memorize number sequences, repeat the numbers backwards, move blocks around, and so forth. On an IQ test, 100 is the mean score, with an equal distribution of people scoring higher and lower in the shape of a bell curve. On the SAT, similarly, 500 is the normal score. Some super geniuses like John von Neumann score way off to the right side of the bell curve, whereas those suffering from mental disabilities are off to the left. But most of us are somewhere in the big beefy center. Weirdly, whatever kind of test a person takes, it tends to produce about the same results, although some tests are definitely better for certain specialized purposes than others. Psychometric testing is so replicable, in fact, that in 2015, the Harvard psychologist Steven Pinker, who's both an eloquent public intellectual and a hugely productive working cognitive scientist, dashed off a tweet saying, "Irony. The replicability crisis in psychology doesn't apply to IQ. Huge sample sizes, replicable results." But people hate the message. Now, some will naturally wonder, perfectly reasonably, can a single number really tell me how smart I am? Well, sort of. Sort of. That sounds like an extremely unscientific answer, yet it's the key to understanding the human sciences. It's a genuine paradox that there are practical uses to a single number cognitive test, but also significant shortcomings as well. More scores could be better, but they also run into diminishing marginal returns. A Silicon Valley sage called Rune coined a couple of terms to describe math versus verbal thinking. For verbal, he came up with word cell, and for math, shape rotator. Personally, I'm good at verbal logic. I'm so-so at 2D reasoning like map reading, and I'm terrible at rotating 3D shapes in my brain, and thus in real life as well. In short, IQ does a decent job of predicting how well someone is going to perform in matters of intelligence over time, like school and careers, but quite a bit less so on specific tasks. From an individual career point of view, you should exploit your skills that you're best at, and downplay doing what you're not so good at. Why should we talk about IQ? People have different abilities. IQ is just one of them, but it's rather important. IQ explains many of the differences and outcomes we see between people. When you come to believe the dogma that all people everywhere have the same talents and gifts, then when results are not evenly distributed, diversicrats will say it must be because of discrimination or racism or systemic something or other. As we get deeper into the 21st century, breakthroughs in genetic research are going to force us to confront the fact of human diversity along this dimension. Understanding cognitive diversity will help us manage expectations, make better decisions with regard to policy, place people where they can best succeed, and mitigate the risks to the less intelligent. On the other hand, I always emphasize that we shouldn't get obsessed with IQ. It's not all important, nor the final word on any of these questions of public importance. Human behavior is incredibly complicated. Remember, no single factor explains more than a small fraction of society, or even our own lives. Think of IQ like this. When you start an RPG video game, you have different skill points for your character. You can give them out of the gate different amounts of strength, agility, charisma, luck, etc. Intelligence is, in real life, like in video games, is one of the skills you get some of at the start of your life, but also a stat you can earn or develop depending on how the game of your life is played out. In other words, it's determined by both nature and nurture. There may well even be ways to increase your IQ. At any rate, IQ is one of the life skill points, but it's not the only one. In both life and games, there are many different kinds of character builds, and loading up on any one skill doesn't guarantee success or even a happy playthrough. This concludes our first video. Our second video will take us to topics regarding IQ diversity and then a general frequently asked questions list. Thank you very much.